Okay, guys, I know all of your kids and they're all angels. I don't even know what you're all doing here. They're all perfect and amazing in every way. Look at all these beautiful babies. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay, here we go. This is what this is what my little guy looks like when he's perfectly behaved. We're gonna discuss why discipline is important and kind of what it is, why positive discipline, why kids misbehave, and kind of how to implement it at home by age, what's appropriate and what's not, how to set consequences, and then also kind of some things you can make sure that this continues to work for you, which is consistency is the biggest thing. So why discipline is important. My husband did the slides, so do not try this at home. This is obviously not a perfect idea of discipline, but so what is discipline? So before we kind of even start talking about, I want to talk about why it's important and why it even matters. So what it is setting expectations for behavior and consequences for not following the expected behavior. Discipline has a kind of a negative connotation, and this is why we really felt like teaching this class is really important, because we do want to address that and by the way, you guys, all these slides are online, so don't feel like you have to take notes. All of this is online. This is actually being recorded and being put online as well. And why this class is important, because we want to tell you how to do it positively, and it's really necessary for both parents and kids. And the whole point of discipline is that it allows you to have better interactions with your kids, and for your kids to actually have better interactions with you. So you're, nagging at them less and yelling at them less and repeating and getting frustrated less and just having enjoying your time with them, because as we know, it's so limited. They're at school or with friends or doing other things so much of the time. We want you to be able to enjoy your time with them. And as a parent, it is your job to teach them behavior and self-control. And with appropriate and consistent discipline, your kiddo will learn consequences and how to take responsibility for themselves. And that's what we're here as parents to do. The way discipline works is we're applying a reward for appropriate behavior and discouraging inappropriate behavior, and using fair and positive means. And effective and positive discipline is actually about teaching and guiding children, not just getting them to obey. And the big difference is that you want them to learn from, like they got in trouble or they didn't get in trouble, but you want them to learn from it and not have to do it over and over, because what happens if we just force them to obey is they just hide it from you. They just become better liars. And that's ultimately not what we're looking for. We're looking for them to become better little human beings that do have self-control and understand boundaries. If there is no discipline, it's really hard for kids. It's hard for adults, but it's really especially difficult for kids. And just to give you an example, as an adult, if you're driving and there's no speed limit and you're driving along and all of a sudden you get a ticket and you're like, what the heck? I had no idea how fast I'm supposed to go. I had no idea what I'm supposed to do. And the worst part is sometimes you get a ticket and sometimes you don't for doing exactly the same thing. So you've no idea what's allowed and what's not. And that's what it means for kids when there's no discipline. They really need boundaries. They've been on this earth for such a short amount of time. They don't know what's safe. They don't know what's not. They don't know what's socially acceptable. So it is your job as parents to do that, to set those boundaries. Without discipline, kids can be really deficient in important skills. They're much more aggressive. They lack self-control. They don't behave the way that you want them to in social settings. And hang on one sec. And they have a tough time making friends because they're not secure and they know exactly what's allowed and what's not, which is hard. And partly we make sure that, at Birch Tree, but also at home, the kids need boundaries and predictability. And that's really important. They need to know that when they do something, it's either going to be applauded or, negatively disciplined every single time. And they feel secure in that. So with discipline, hold on, back one. Okay. With discipline, kids have firm boundaries and guidance, and they benefit from that. So they have a lot less anxiety, just like you would when you know exactly what you're supposed to do at work. And then you're told, oh, you're doing a great job when you do what you're supposed to do. you have a lot more confidence and less anxiety. Also, kids are responsible and they enjoy being good a lot more. They have self-control and they know they're accountable for their mistakes. And this is kind of how we teach right and wrong. It's through morality, but kids this age are too little to really understand morality. We teach it with consequences. So a couple things to remember. You want to let go of self-imposed or societal pressures. If it's in your house, it's okay to have dessert before dinner. You know what? Own it, right? If that works for your family, that's great. Then do that. Don't, in our house, like for example, we don't let shoes in our house, or we don't let, our kids only get half an hour of screen time a day. And our kids are always like, well, my friend gets as much screen time as they want. We're like, yeah, you know what? That's their family. That's their rules. Our rules are different. And that's all there is to do. And then every child is different. What works with one kid totally does not work with another, which is so frustrating. Because, for example, my older child, she, like if you put her on timeout, she is devastated. Like that for her is like the worst thing. No one's talking to her. It's horrible. My little guy, my younger kid, is like perfectly happy to sit there and play with his toes for hours. So what do you do with that? Right? So we need to find something else that works for him and that they're going to be totally different. And then also, you're your kid's most important role model. So it's hard because we have to behave at work. We have to then be home and, be in our best behavior at home, but they will do the things they see you do. So if they see you using inappropriate words, I'll tell you, they're going to use inappropriate words. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, where did you get this? I can guarantee you where they got it. If they see you, running, or they see you, whatever it is, good and bad, actually, they will copy it. And just understand it's hard to see yourself reflected in these little, tiny little people, but they're getting their main messages from you. So why children misbehave, we all wonder, but here's a couple of things that we've come up with. They're too young to know their actions are unacceptable. So this is when you take your 1-year-old to a nice restaurant and your kid is, maybe not throwing food, but they're yelling and they're like in their seat in and out. They are not able to control themselves. And partly for taking a 1-year-old to a nice restaurant, you're not setting them up to be successful. You have to understand, you bring some toys, you go to a restaurant where they don't have to wait more than 20 minutes. Understand that you can't tell a 1-year-old to sit quietly. They won't do that. A 4-year-old, absolutely. Then some kids are frustrated and angry or upset and have no other reasonable way to express their feelings. This is really big when they're 2 and 3. Their vocabulary is not big enough to say, Mom, I'm really frustrated that you didn't, give me dessert. Or Mom, I'm really frustrated that that we don't get to play more. And because they don't have that vocabulary, they may kick and they scream and they yell and they throw a fit. And you're like, oh my God, what's wrong? Just tell me. But they can't label that emotion yet. And because they can't label that emotion, they act out. So one way to help them would be like, you look really frustrated, or wow, you look mad. To put a name to that feeling. And yeah, they won't respond to that at 2, but at 4, they will have a way to label it. And that will be really helpful to you as parents. Kids also get really stressed out by major changes. And you assume just because, well, it doesn't affect them, they don't have to move, or they don't have a new job, or they're not waking up early with a new sibling. They really see it and they feel your stress with it. So when there is a new family member, a new baby, or they're starting daycare, or, you have a new job, which you're stressed about, or you guys are traveling or moving to a new house, it really does affect kids and you will see them act out. And it's not going to last forever, but that's their way of processing and expressing their emotions. They're not getting attention, even they do behave appropriately. And this happens, right? I mean, you're tired. You have a new baby at home. You can't always give your kiddo as much attention as they need, and they will act out because all kids want is your attention. So what I would encourage you to do, even when you're tired and you have a new baby, your bigger kids don't need as much attention as you think. If you can give them about 20 minutes a day of really undivided attention and 20 minutes of your time getting on the floor, and let me tell you, I know you can only play trains or Barbies or Legos for so long. Like, believe me, I know. but get on the level with your kids and play Legos or Barbies or trains or whatever it is they're playing. And don't look on your phone, put your phone away. They really need that time. And you will see afterwards, they're gonna play by themselves and kind of leave you alone for a bit. They really need that undivided attention, and you're gonna see a lot less behavior problems if you give them that time. This is the next two are kind of more as they get older, kind of 5, 6, and even older than that. When they feel you've been unfair and they want to punish you, this is kind of the teenager coming out, and they want to be more independent, and they feel constricted. And this is, again, a little bit later. They're a little bit older. This is elementary school and up. So we're not quite there yet, but they definitely sometimes, you do get this even from younger kiddos. Do you guys have any questions? No? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So positive discipline. So what is positive discipline? It's really, straightforward, much harder to do. So positive discipline is a method where parents or caregivers clearly communicate what behaviors are appropriate, what behaviors are inappropriate, what the rewards for good behavior, and consequences for inappropriate behavior. So when you start at Birch Tree in September, you'll notice the first 3 or 4 weeks, there's not a lot of academic instruction going on. What the teachers spend their first 3 or 4 weeks doing, and there's some, but they spend their days setting up the expectations for the class. So 3s and 4s, the older kiddos, they will set up the rules in the class and they will post them on the wall. So we don't run, we don't hit, we treat our friends nicely, we share, we clean up, whatever those are. And they reinforce those every single day to teach the kiddos what the appropriate behaviors are and what the rewards are for good behavior. So teachers use different things. We use star charts sometimes, for pottying, things like that, when they're first getting going on teaching you behavior. Sometimes you get a warm fuzzies jar where every time, twice a day when the kiddos they get to put a pom-pom in a jar as a class if they cleaned up or if they, whatever it was that they did that was positive. And then once they fill a pom-pom jar, they get to have a class party. So things like that, the teachers try to encourage the good behavior and give a lot of attention to that good behavior. And then what are the consequences for bad behavior? And funny enough, for up to about 3 years old, the worst thing you can do to a kid is tell them that they're going to be last in line going outside. It's devastating. Oh my gosh, it is. If you're hey, if you can't clean up your toys, you're not going to, if I warn you again, hey, we're going to have to talk about, you're going to have to hold my hand in line and we're going to be last together. And it holy moly, you'll be surprised at, how much kids' behavior changes. You're hey, if you're not going to do this, we're going to be last in line together. And it's devastating. So there are consequences for misbehavior. We really try at Birch Tree to stress the positive behavior and give a lot of attention to the positive behavior with the idea that because kids want that attention, they're going to behave in ways that are appropriate. And usually that works really well. It takes a lot of course correction through a lot of the year. And by the way, patience of saints, as every teacher is, actually a saint in teacher clothing. But it takes a lot of patience. But this is what they're doing, and this is where the positive discipline starts. How it works. So parents set boundaries for behavior. And we're going to go through this kind of scenario by scenario. Parents set boundaries. Then boundaries behavior are clearly and age appropriately communicated. Positive behavior is consistently praised, and consistently is kind of a key word here. And negative behavior is consistently has consequences. So if you want your kiddo to make sure that they're, cleaning up their toys. Hey, I really need you to clean up your toys because your toys are gonna, we take good care of our stuff or things are gonna get destroyed. You tell them, I can do it with you. These are the bins it goes in. Let's do it together and you can finish. Great. When they do it, you really make sure that you praise them. Hey, you did it all by yourself. That was awesome. I loved how you cleaned up your toys. Let's go play the next game together. I'm so excited to play with you. If they don't do it after you tell them a couple times, then you would say, you know what? You can't play with another toy until this is cleaned up. And I can't play with you until you help me clean all of this up. Right? The consequences are you can't play with anything else until it's done. Or, you know, if you can't clean up these toys, you might not get to play with them for a little while. Whatever it is you decide the consequence is, but there are constantly consequences. And then every day they don't clean up their toys. You consistently do the same thing. So some days you don't put away the toys. Some days you don't make them. It's always the same thing. So they always have to put their own stuff away because they know they can expect that every single day. And that's really important. Setting boundaries, communicate acceptable and unacceptable behavior. And this would be a great thing to do as you're kind of setting your kiddo up for, if you're doing something. So let's say you're going to a restaurant. So before you even get there, this would be great to communicate, hey, we're going to be sitting at a nice restaurant. I brought some toys for you, but you know what? I expect you to sit nicely. I expect you to wait for your food. I believe that you can do it. I'm really excited to do this as a family. If you're not able to do this, then we might not be able to go out to dinner very often, or we might have to go home. I know that you can do it. I know this is, whatever it is. Or if you're going to a friend's house, hey, or if someone's coming to your house, hey, I know this is going to be hard, but I really expect you to share your toys. So the toys you don't want to share, put them away so nobody else is having to go after your toys. But I expect you to share. I expect you to, whatever it is you expect them to do, and tell them before it's happening. Set them up to be successful. And that really helps. And this is really hard at first. It's really hard to have to consistently set up those boundaries. The younger you do it, the easier it is. Because you only have to be consistent, and eventually the kids learn. So, throwing food, for example, right? If your 3-year-old is still throwing food, you did not set those boundaries early enough. So at around 1.5, even earlier, you could set the boundary of if you're gonna throw food, it's okay. It just means you're not hungry. You get to throw it. Hey, food stays on our plate. If you're gonna throw it, it's okay. It means you're not hungry, and then you take it away. And you know what? By 2, your kids won't be throwing food. So you can move on to the next thing. And there's always, as they develop and as they have more and more things they can do independently, you're gonna have to set more and more boundaries, and which is unfortunate, but without boundaries, it is really chaotic in your house, at school, in society. And partly your kids need to know that they have somebody that loves them enough and cares about them enough to do this really hard thing. It is hard. It is hard for every parent. I will tell you, if a parent tells you, oh, my kids just listen to me, I never have to raise my voice, I never get frustrated, they are lying. Absolutely, 100% lying. It is impossible. Every kid is to do this, but they need to know that you're willing to do the hard thing for them, because you know what? You're not their friend, you're their parent, which is the most important role anyone's ever going to play in their life, and they're counting on you to do this. So when setting boundaries, making sure that, hold on, let me just look at my notes here. Making sure they're age appropriate, and we'll go over what's age appropriate, what's not. So kids should be told the right thing to do, not just the wrong thing to do. So for example, food stays on your plate, not just don't throw food. Hey, the ball is an outside toy of don't throw the ball. I'm trying to think what else, hey, water stays in the tub as opposed to no splashing. And it's using that positive language, which is really much more productive. And it sounds counterintuitive, but I promise you this works. Honest to God, this works. And then another huge one, be on the same page as your partner. Because you know what? Your little 2-year-old is so smart, and they totally know how to work mom and dad. And it's incredible that they've been on this earth for 2 years, but they know how to manipulate you. And it's actually quite frustrating, but they know exactly what to do to kind of pit you against your partner. So if one partner thinks it's okay to, throw the ball inside, the partner thinks that no, it's not, be like, you know what, let's come to compromise, but we have to be on the same page. We have to be telling them the same thing. Otherwise, as your kids get older, they're gonna pit you against each other, and it's not good. So so kind of pick what it is you guys are gonna discipline your kid, and then pick your battles. it's hard to just be, no, 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 don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Your kids live in that house too. So if, don't leave things that can be easily broken and then get upset when they're broken. Your kids, like I have a little boy who's like, we're on our third TV. I don't even know how many windows we've gone through. He just breaks things. So we just don't have things that we don't want broken around our house. And now he's 8, so it's not as common. But we just know that, we have an upstairs playroom, which is like a one giant padded room where they can do whatever they want. And the rest of the house, they have to be careful but we just don't have glass things that our kids can break, knowing that they live there too. And it's not really fair to them to set them up to fail. Did I miss something here? Hold on. One sec.
I actually had a question.
Yeah.
On your example with the, picking up toys is something I struggle with because I'm, trying to tlean dishes, and you kind of use the example of saying okay, let's do this together. Mm-hmm. Let's pick up your toys. I'll help you. But sometimes I don't feel like I have the time to pick up the mess he's made. I don't have time to sit there and watch him so slowly pick everything up, and it takes such a long time where he's made the mess in 2 minutes, and it takes us 50 minutes to an hour just to get him to undo the mess. So how would you say, because sometimes I struggle with that. How would you suggest kind of approaching that if I don't always want to participate in helping him pick up? I don't know if that sounds bad.
Yeah, well, sometimes you're just like, buddy, come on, let's hurry up. And be like, I'm going to help you, but, you made the mess, I can help you, and right, you're going to go a lot faster than he will. But he needs to he needs to know that he's part of cleaning up process, because he's actually the one that made the mess. I can't imagine you were the one that were throwing the toys, right? Maybe, but also because the consequence is, right, because then he's going to know, hey, next time before I throw toys, I didn't love the cleaning up part, I'm going to be careful what I throw because the cleaning up I didn't like. But if you clean up after him every time, there's no consequence to throwing the toys. Does that make sense?
Do you suggest that I always participate with him in starting the cleaning? Because
yes.
Another thing he'll tell me is, mommy does it, mommy.
No, to be like, what, buddy, mommy, what, you were playing, yep, but you have to be consistent. And what, buddy, you threw the toys, you were playing, or sometimes my kids and I playing together. Hey, we played together. Let's both clean up. But you were playing, so I'm gonna help you, but you're gonna start. And you may not get to finish together, but at least he has to start and put it away, right? At least start the process. And you might have to come back later and finish it up, but he has to be involved in at least understanding, hey, this is the backside of the playing, right? This is the other coin of the playing, is that you get to clean it up. Because Benny's pretty small, but pretty soon he can clean up after himself.
Yeah.
And he should be able to by 3 or 4 or even 3. So I will tell you, our teachers don't clean up after the kids in the 3s and 4th classes. Sometimes they do if they're, in a real hurry, but the kids clean up and they can do it perfectly well. And so what we do in classes to make it easier for them, for the kids, is we label the bins. So that might be something I would encourage you to do, is to have a Lego bin with a picture of the Legos on it, or a bin that has, so they can see exactly where it goes. But they get to do most of the work.
Okay, thank you.
That would be my suggestion.
I have a question that kind of following that whole thing.
Yeah.
So what if there is no way to compromise at this given minute, and there's no way to clean it up, and it's evening, and it's time to go to bed? Would the parent finish cleaning it up, or would I leave it?
It's
he sees tomorrow that nothing happened.
It's up to you, and it's up to how old your kiddo is. A 3 or 4-year-old, I would leave it. It also depends how much it bugs you, right? It's a personal preference. If it's upstairs in your playroom where you can't see it, leave it and let him clean up the next morning. If it's in your living room or your kitchen where it's bugging you, be like, what, you start it. I'm gonna help you this time clean it up, but I need you to get started. So it's personal preference, but they can do it. They're perfectly capable of doing it. Or next time have them start cleaning up sooner. That would be my other suggestion is like, hey, if you have to get ready for bed at 8 o'clock, at 7:45 you start cleaning up.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Does that kind of help?
Yeah. Well, we usually will leave it, and the next morning, well, she sees it. She's 4. She sees it, but she doesn't really care. That's my
Well, so what you can say is, you know what? Until this is cleaned up, you can't play with any other toys. So, which is what we do in class. So, if you made a mess, like you're not allowed to go to the next station or play with the next toys until this is cleaned up. And what you will find at home is that she's going to resist it. She's going to try to pick up something else. Like, nope, we're going to wait. We're going to wait until this is cleaned up. Let's go do it together. I'll get you started. And I really can't wait to play with you. We're going to play this fun game as soon as it's cleaned up. And they'll begrudgingly do it eventually because they want to play with something else.
Okay, thank you. That's a good one.
Yeah, give it a shot. Does anyone have anything else?
Yeah. My daughter is 3.5. She recently started talking over me as soon as I start talking to another adult, or like if I pick up a phone.
Yeah.
She just talks and screams all over me, and I don't know what to do. I try.
Sure.
Also not paying attention, kind of discouraging this behavior. She just screams louder, and if I'm scheduling a doctor's appointment, I just have to pay attention to her. So she just let me continue my conversation with the receptionist.
So a couple things are, and this is actually funny, we're on this attention slide, which is really kind of to this point. All children want is their parents' attention. And it's funny, my husband and I, our joke is that the best way to get our kids to listen to us is to get on a phone call. They don't need anything from us until the moment we pick up the phone. And all of a sudden, we're the most popular people here. So they want your attention, and that is the most effective tool you can give them. So you may want to talk to her. What we do at home, and it kind of works for us, is we say, if I'm talking to somebody else, right? We could be taking a walk and we're chatting, and then we stop and see somebody while we're walking. Tap my hand, right? And tap my hand, and that means I know that you need something. And let me finish my sentence, and I will absolutely get to you. But you need to let me know. And let's practice, right? So we practice, okay, you tap my arm, that means that I know you need something, and I will stop, and then you give attention, really positive. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. What did you want? And you give a lot of positive attention. So if your kid is screaming while you're on the phone, pause the call, and it will only take a couple times. Be like, hey, I'm on the call. I'm gonna give you my attention when I'm done, but you need to stop. If you are gonna keep screaming, I'm not gonna give you my attention when I'm done. Right? And so when you're done with the call, whatever it is, if she's quiet, if you're like, I am so excited, let's go play together, and give so much positive praise. You did it so well. You waited. Thank you for being so patient. Let's go play. And give her a ton of attention. If she keeps yelling, you get off the phone. You know what? I asked you to stop. So I'm going to take a break. I'm not going to give you my attention right now. And you know what? Ignore her. Let her scream, let her cry, let her stomp her feet. Ignore her. Be like, okay, are you done? Because I can't give you my attention. I can't hear you when you're yelling that loud. That hurts my ears. When you're done and you're ready to be, your confident self, then I'm happy to play with you, but you don't get to yell when I'm doing something. That's not okay. I'm happy to give my attention, not right now. And it'll take 3, 4, 10 times, but eventually, because she wants your attention, she is going to do it.
And today, sorry, I don't want to
No, you're fine. This is a great question.
No, today I had a conversation with one of her teachers. She pushed another kid in her class, and I asked, I honestly wanted, to learn more about positive and negative encouragement.
Yeah.
And I asked teacher, so what did you do? If she doesn't want to get dressed, and while all other kids are already dressed and waiting to go outside, and she's clearly refusing, what did you do? And she said, well, we was I was sitting in front of her, until she started calm down.
Yep.
But I just feel I don't know, is it enough in this situation, or shall she just maybe it's better to go back to classroom and say, okay, maybe if you don't want to change before going outside, then you will not go for a walk outside.
Well, and that's the thing is that, and I think that's what she did but we don't want to give her the chance to play in the classroom. That's kind of fun, right? You want to take away the fun. So that's why, and I will tell you, I've sat in it, every director, every teacher, you sit in the cubby until because it's boring, right? It's not fun to sit in the cubby. No kid wants to sit in the cubby. Your choice is you can go outside or you can sit in the cubby with me. And they will sit there a couple times, but eventually, and we don't give them attention, we don't pay attention, we just sit and whatever. Don't give them attention, and eventually, most of the time, by the second or third time they've missed recess, they're gonna get dressed because you know what? It's boring.
Yeah.
But we don't go back into the club.
If it happens in the playground or home, what do I do? Because I don't have experience with other kids.
No, that's great. So I would say if she's okay, for example, kids say, I'm not going to school until, I'm not putting on my shoes. You want to go on a walk. Well, I'm not putting on my shoes. Okay, well, I'm going to sit there and you're going to sit here until you put on your shoes. I'll wait. I have nowhere to go, right? And the thing is, you can't lose your cool. That's the hard part because they want you to lose your cool. They want your attention. Don't act annoyed. Don't get mad. You've got nowhere to go in the whole world, right? You will sit there until the day of dawn, right? You'll sit there forever waiting for them. And it is not fun. You're trying to make it as boring as possible. And eventually they're going to do it, right? But if you keep lecturing them, you keep giving them attention, positive or negative, they just want your attention, positive or negative. So if you withhold it, they're going to do what you're asking them to do, right? And it's really hard. This is really, really, really hard because you are so annoyed and you're in a hurry to get somewhere and you're like, come on, kid, get it together. But if you do it consistently, it will only be 10 times. It is so hard. Believe me, I know how hard it is. How I'm trying to get my son to do my homework and he just won't do it. I'm like, come on, buddy, do your homework so we can go play or we can do and he just complaining. I'm like, fine, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna do my thing until you're done. Come to me when it's done. And he'll putter around and he'll complain about it. Okay, first night, second, third, fourth night, we don't get to play together. And eventually he'll begrudgingly do it. Because he does want my attention. He does want to play. And that's what we're counting on, right? But when they do it, what you're asking them to do, give them so much positive reinforcement that they're like, yeah, that was awesome. I love this. I'll totally do that again. Okay, so praise. So understand that praise is really, really, really effective. And giving them praise is much more effective than punishing them. So that positive discipline, as much of it as you can give, and saying, I'm proud of you sharing your toys is much more effective than punishing a child who doesn't share. I'm telling him, hey, thank you for being so patient while I'm on the phone works much better than yelling at them for not being on the phone. And then the other thing is be really specific when giving praise. And I think we talked about this at back to school nights. When parents see their kids' project, right? Because you see them every day. These kids bring so much art projects home. The kid's like, do you like it? Do you like it? And you're like, yeah, good job, buddy, right? That's what good job, good work. That to them means nothing. What they want, what it's much better to say is, hey, I loved the way you blended blue and black together, right? What a cool swirl. I can tell you spent a lot of time on this little corner here. What is it? What kind of animal is that? Right? Ask them about it. But that good job is pretty meaningless. So if you say, give very specifics to the things that you liked that they did, and it's much more likely that they're going to do it. So, hey, I loved how you picked up those toys. And oh my gosh, look you did it all by yourself. You sorted them into their bins. That's awesome. I didn't even know you could do that. That's incredible. Or, you clean up your own dishes. Wow, you are such a big helper. I couldn't have cleaned up dinner without you, but now I have your help. And because you helped me, now I have more time to play with you. So let's go play, right? Give really positive attention. And I promise you it works. I promise you. Sometimes you got to fake it because you know what? You can only get excited about somebody cleaning up their toys so many times, right? You're just annoyed they're not doing it. But if you just give that over the top praise a couple times, your kids will do it much easier. So discipline by age. So I want to kind of go over what's appropriate by, what can you expect from your kids from a certain age. So infants, They learn by watching what you do. So this is where you set good examples of behavior. You talk to them. You use words that you want them to use. You say thank you. You clean up. You're kind. You want to use positive language to guide your baby. So sometimes there's a place for no or stop. I would really encourage you to save no and stop and kind of that like very loud tone for when they're doing something dangerous. And the reason I say that is because we actually a few months ago had an incident at one of our schools where we had a kid in the parking lot. And this is pretty typical. We had a kid in a parking lot, and I'm actually out there getting in my car, and this 2-year-old is like running, and the mom is yelling, no, 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 and this kid is running, and it's actually quite dangerous because there's cars everywhere. So we caught him, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad he's okay. And she was like, I don't know what to do. I yell at him, stop, all the time, and he doesn't stop. And the problem is, if you yell stop and no all the time, they become immune to it. And that's a big problem. That's a safety issue. So you really want to save the word no and stop, and especially that yelling tone when it's really dangerous. Otherwise, they're going to tune you out. So please sit down. Please sit down. Hey, feet off the table. Let's wash our hands. Like use that. Let's clean up as opposed to you're leaving a mess. It works much better. And I would, again, like for as a safety thing, use those like stop right now, yelling no. Use it when it's a safety thing, so they really understand when you mean business. And at this age, put things out of their reach, right? Don't expect them to not play with the glass thing or don't put things in their mouth. They don't know better. So just put it away, baby-proof your house. They're gonna put everything in their mouth, and just know that. And that's what they're supposed to do. And kind of don't expect them to act otherwise. So put out things they can play with, and and set them up. Like don't take your baby out, to a friend's house when they didn't get a good nap, or when they didn't, when they haven't eaten well, because you know what, they're gonna scream, and you're gonna have a bad time. They're gonna have a bad time. Everyone's gonna be crying. Everyone's gonna be screaming. So set them up to be successful. And it's okay to be like, my kid's having a rough day, and no friend is going to judge you for not bringing your 1-year-old that's cranky over. Because you know what? They don't want to see your cranky 1-year-old either. Guaranteed. So set them up to be successful. If you're taking them to the playground, bring a snack, knowing that they're going to want something to eat. Because if they're going to be cranky if they're hungry and things like that. Just know what's appropriate for that age. So let's actually go through an example. We've kind of talked about this, but your baby's throwing food. So this is probably about 9 months to a year. So the first thing you do is you have food on their plate. Hey, when you throw food, it makes a mess. Your food needs to stay on your plate. Don't give them a lecture about there are starving children in Africa. Your 1-year-old doesn't care. Really like simple sentences. Just that's what it is. Okay, second one is give them a spoon to play with, because make sure you divert their attention so they can't be successful. And then teach them to say, all done, take the plate away. There you go. They're distracted, they're happy, you can feed them. Then if they continue to throw food, you pick up the plate and say, you know what, no throwing food or dinner is over. You take the plate away, then you put it back. If they keep throwing food, you know what? Okay, you're not hungry, take the plate away and end the meal. And it seems so counterintuitive to take food away from a kid, but I will tell you, if they're throwing food, they're not hungry, they're playing with it. And if you continue to let them have it, they're learning that's okay. So you gotta take it away. It takes about 2 times. It's really quick. That hunger, like they learn real quick not to throw food if you really do take it away though. Okay? But here's the hard part. You got to do it every time, okay? Because if the first time you take the plate away and the second time you leave the plate and they're allowed to keep throwing food, they have no idea what they're allowed and what they're not allowed to do. And then the third time you take it away, they're like, what do you mean? Like, it was totally different. Now I don't know what to expect. So they have to know to expect the plate to be removed every time. And it's a pretty quick lesson. But it's hard. You're going to have to do it. We actually did this tonight with my son. He came home from soccer and he was like, I'm not hungry. We're like, okay, well, you're not going to eat. Half an hour later, he comes back and he's like, I'm starving. I'm like, buddy, you missed dinner. That's it. And he complained that he was going to starve to death. Like actually, he thought like that he would perish like on the spot. And you know what? He's still alive, very much kicking. Hasn't, you know, died of malnutrition yet. He's still okay. And he's like, he couldn't, and he knows this happens every time. Like, if you don't eat, this is what happens. But it hasn't happened in a while, and he like could not believe that we actually did it. We're like, we told you we were gonna do, like, you knew it was gonna happen. So, and then he's like, oh, can I have dessert? Does that count? We're like, what? No, that's not a thing, you know? But so here he's out there complaining about it. So a toddler. So a toddler starting to recognize what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and they do know a little better. They're gonna test some rules and they're gonna watch your reaction. And this is so funny to see. And we even see it with teachers. Like, the kids know at school they're not allowed to go running in the hallway. And they're gonna run down the hallway and they look for their teacher to see what their reaction is. And they like look behind you and they know that they're gonna give them reaction. So if you give them like, if you're like, oh my gosh, you're so cute. Okay, well now it's acceptable, right? Teacher's like, nope, walking feet. And what teachers do is they'll be like, you know what? It looks like you're having a tough time walking, so let's try again. And they'll walk them back to the door and we're gonna, you know, walk back out. And sometimes it's like 4 times, which again, like, God bless them, they're angels. But they'll walk your kiddo out to the door like 3 or 4 times. Okay, let's try again. It looks like we're gonna practice walking. Let's try walking again. And eventually the kid's like, oh my God, this is awful. Let's just, you know, I'm just gonna walk. And this is about the age, about 2, when you can start introducing them to natural consequences. And I'll talk more about that later, but this is the idea, is that, you know, like, something happens as a result of what you just did. So, you know, if you throw food, you're not hungry, I'm gonna take away the food. Natural consequence, right? If you don't wear a coat outside because you don't wanna wear a coat, you're gonna be cold. And you're gonna have to be out there for a while and you're gonna be cold, and that's the natural consequence. But we'll talk more about that later. So praise and give lots of attentions that you like. And this is really gets cemented at this age. Give them lots of attention, redirect to a new activity. Kids have pretty short attention spans at this age. So it's pretty easy to redirect them. Hey, you know what? We're not gonna play with the hot iron. Let's play with something over here instead. This looks more fun, right? But like a campfire. Oh my gosh, you go camping with your 2-year-old. All they wanna do is play with the fire. Be like, you know, you could let them touch the hot grill, natural consequences, they won't touch it again. Or you'd be like, you know what, let's go find some sticks for the fire instead. So it's pretty easy to redirect. And then this is the age you get those lovely tantrums. And your kid at this age understands that they can get your attention, but they don't have the words to say, I don't wanna go to grandma's house, or I don't wanna put on my shoes. They don't have those words and they don't understand their own frustrations yet, but they know they're frustrated. So this is where you get the tantrums. This is kind of where the terrible twos come from, is that their body is kind of ahead of their emotional IQ on this one. So anticipate the tantrum triggers. So for my son, it's when he's hungry. Oh my God, he's a tyrant. So we always keep snacks in the car before, you know, even like now, you know, on the way home from soccer, on the way to wherever he's going, make sure to snack, and he's gonna be the sweetest kid ever. Some kids really need to have, they need to have their little lovey toy. Some kids, if you're gonna be in a long car ride, you know, give them a toy to play with, but make sure that you kind of give them something to do to stave off those tantrums. And then try very short timeouts. And we'll, again, talk about timeouts a little bit later, but this is the time to kind of implement it. Before this, they don't understand it. So for example, you and your toddler go to the beach, and your kiddo's throwing sand, right? And they're throwing sand at your neighbors, and you're so embarrassed. So first of all, set the boundary. So tell the kid, when you throw sand, it's gonna get into people's eyes. So if you continue, you're gonna have to leave, or we're not gonna be able to play with this anymore. So step 2, divert their attention, give them a ball, encourage them to play with that instead of throwing sand. Be like, hey, let's go play over here with your shovel together. Let's go play. We're not gonna throw sand though. Bring shovels and other buckets to encourage them to play with sand. Then again, they continue throwing sand. And then you take them somewhere else for a minute as a little break. And you say, hey, it looks like you're still having a tough time. Let's take a minute. Hello. Oh my gosh. We're not gonna throw sand, but let me know when you're ready to go back and play. but this is unacceptable, and I need you to understand this is not something that we do. And you know what? If they're still throwing sand, you're gonna have to say, hey, you know what? The bucket is gonna have to take a break. You can't play with sand safely. The sand is, the bucket or the shovel is you can't play with that right now. Or we're going home. I told you that you're not playing nicely. This is what happens, and your kids, like, to losing a bucket at the beach, oh my God, it's like tragedy, right? But that's it. But here's the thing, you can't give it back. You said it's gone, it's gone. Because if you give it back, they've learned that mom caves and you yell loud enough, and it's embarrassing your kids screaming at the beach, right? Nobody wants that. But I will tell you, your kid's gonna scream at the beach when you lose their shovel every time, unless you really take the shovel and stick to your guns a couple times. Because if they scream and you give the shovel back, they've learned by screaming, I get what I want. And that's not what you want them to learn. What you want them to learn is screaming does nothing for me. When mom said she's gonna take the shovel, that's like she's sticking to her word. And they know exactly what to expect next time. And that's really important. It's also important for your child to know there's a hard boundary, and they're gonna bump into it occasionally. The hard boundary is we're going home, or the hard boundary is I'm taking away the bucket, and mom said she's gonna do it, dad said they're gonna do it, by God, they're gonna do it. Like, they're gonna keep their word. And just like you said, hey, you get a new toy because you, I don't know, whatever, did what you're supposed to do, or, we're gonna go on a walk, or we're gonna, something good, and you kept your word, it's just as important to keep your word when you said there's consequences. Because if they learn that you're not gonna keep their word, eventually they're gonna see it as like mom and dad are not trustworthy. And that's a big problem. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Believe me, and we all fail at it sometimes. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, just take the frickin' iPad, I just need you to be quiet, right? Like, yeah, we all mess it up, believe me. I'm like, victim number one of messing it up like once a day. But at least we have to try and be consistent as much as we can. It's really hard. I'm not saying it's easy. This is why, the parents are exhausted and tired and struggle. And this is why we do classes like this, because it's really hard. But we're, knowing that it sucks and you're still doing the right thing. So preschool, this is, kind of that 2, 3, 4-year-old age. Allow your kids to make choices among alternatives. So, I don't want to wear the pink dress. Okay, well, your choices are the blue dress or the green dress. Give them choices, because your 3 and 4 and 5-year-old want to be in control of their environment, but they don't have the mental capacity to make good choices yet. And this is hence why some kids wear polka dots with stripes. Fine, acceptable choice. But they're not old enough to really understand the consequence of their choices. So give them, I don't want cereal for breakfast. Okay, you don't want cereal, fine. Your choice is, I don't know, a bagel or bread. You choose. I don't want to wear shoes. Okay, well, you don't have a choice. You got to wear shoes. You can wear your boots, or you can wear your, whatever, something else. So give them 2, most 3 choices. And that is it. Your dinner is your choices of rice, beans, and chicken. There are no other choices. That is it. Pick among these. That's it. Those are your choices, right? But it's much easier to get your kid, if you just say you have to do this, they're going to fight you on it. If you tell them, here are your choices, they're going to begrudgingly pick one of those 2 and you'll be done. So give them a choice and move on, and they usually will pick those. Or, I don't want to clean up my toys. Okay, well, you have a choice. We could pick up the Legos first, or the, soldiers first. Or we could pick up Legos first or the farm animals. Where do you want to start? And all of a sudden they're feeling empowered. So give them those choices. Or, I can pick up the toy first, or you can pick up the toy first. But we're going to do it. But you tell me, what do you choose? And this becomes really important kind of this is you see a lot in the class, the kids are like, I don't want to sit in circle time. Okay, you know what? I understand you don't want to. How about you pick your color square? And all of a sudden, a world of possibilities opens up. You can have the red square, the blue square, and holy Moses. So And like now they feel like they're in charge. So give them a choice and they're gonna like happily choose a blue square and off we go. But this kind of really helps here. This is also the time to explain to your kiddos that it's okay to be mad, but not to break things or hurt people. So, hey, I know you're mad. I'm really frustrated. I'd be frustrated too if my friend took my toy. But you know what? We still can't yell at them or we can't hit them, right? This is where we use our words. Because at this point, 3, 4, they do have the words to express themselves. So this would be a good time to kind of encourage themselves. And also point out your own emotions. Like, I feel really frustrated that you're not cleaning up your toys right now, right? You're modeling that use of emotion of like, I am so mad they didn't have milk at the grocery store or whatever it is, right? Like, or I had a really long day. I am really mad that, whatever it is that you're mad at. So kind of model those emotions and some of that language. And you'll see your kids start to use it too. It's pretty impressive. This is also a good time to start doing chores. So really simple one. So the one we started with my kids was they had to put the shoes at the front door in the cubbies before they went to sleep. Then eventually they can put away, they can put away dishes. They can clean up their own toys. Our kids have to take all the towels. Like I think since they're like 5, they had to take all the towels in the house once a week and throw them in the dishwasher or throw them in the machine. And they're totally like a 4-year-old is totally capable of doing that. And they feel really useful and they feel powerful. And especially when you say, hey, thank you so much. You helped me clean the house. Now we get to go play longer together, and give them that positive reinforcement, and they feel really powerful. And that's why in class, kids love being class helpers. They love to feel powerful. They love to feel helpful, and give them that opportunity. Let them. We'll talk about this a little more again, but kind of that if you don't do something, naturally something else happens. So for example, kids don't love to brush their teeth at the age of 3 and 4. So, hey, if you're not gonna brush your teeth, that's okay. But you know what? When you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities and your teeth get germs in them. So if you're not gonna brush your teeth, your choice, but then we can't have sweets because it's really bad for your teeth, right? And then they don't get sweets for a couple of days until they start brushing their teeth. Natural consequences, right? Like one follows the other naturally. And we'll talk about consequences later, but you want to make sure that whatever the consequence is, it's tied to the, whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do. Any questions, you guys, before I keep going? Okay, all right. So let's do an example. We kind of talked about this, but you're going to a restaurant and your child won't sit in their seat. This happens like everywhere all the time, right? It's quite common. So the first thing you do on the way there, hey, we're going out to eat. It's a privilege. There's going to be servers with heavy trays. It's important that you stay in your seat, because if you don't stay in your seat, they're going to drop something and, it's going to hurt somebody. So this is really polite. We stay in our seat. I'm bringing you some toys to play with. Here's some colorings. This is what I expect of you. Okay, you bring some games, then you play some games with them. You're not going to be able to have a nice, long, romantic conversation. Just acknowledge that because your kid's with you. And you try to divert their attention. And then if they continue getting out of their seat, you take them outside. Hey, we're going to take a break because I need you to stay in your seat and be safe. So let's go back. And you know what? If that doesn't work, you're going to have to take your food to go, or, tell them, hey, if you can't be safe, we're going to have to leave. And that means that, if you're safe, we can have dessert at the restaurant. But if you're not going to sit in your seat, there's no dessert. And I really want you to have dessert at the restaurant. So I really would love your help sitting still. If you can't do it, that's okay. We're going to go home. And sometimes you're going to have to take your food to go. And you're going to have to do it at the age of 3, and you have to do it at the age of 8. Because some kids, sometimes they're going to have to know that, they mean business. And we've had to do this with my kids when they're 8, and it's really embarrassing, but it's better to be embarrassed than to have your kid continue to have this issue. So kindergarten and beyond, at this age, and this is kind of, your kid will have a really good idea of what right and wrong is. And right and wrong is different for every family. There are certain things that are pretty innate, but right and wrong of you have to wear a heavy jacket every time you go outside, or it's okay to go out in just a sweater? Do I have to share my food, or is it okay not, whatever those are, but they kind of have a good idea. And so talk about those choices. Like for example, a kid comes home from kindergarten, they're like, this girl didn't share her lunch today. We're like, yeah, I can see. Well, what would you do in that situation, right? Or, whatever it is, discuss it with them and to see how they'd react, and tell them how, what are some good and bad options. And this is a really good way to kind of to play out, to have them be prepared for new situations. Talk about family expectations and then reasonable consequences for not following the family rules. And this is where you get a lot of, and I've gotten a lot of it with my older kids, is that, well, her mom lets her, or my friend has a cell phone, why don't I have a cell phone? And I'll tell you the answer is because that's our family's rules, right? And that's all there is to it. I'm not going to negotiate with you. Like, you're not going to get a cell phone because your friend has a cell phone. Those are our families. Well, my friend's allowed to be on they have a Nintendo Switch. Why don't we have a Nintendo Switch? Because that's our family rules. End of story, right? So don't feel like, but you're going to start getting those questions and it's tough, and just stick to your guns. You don't have to, whatever works for your family is what works for you. Like my daughter's friend, they watch TV for 2 hours together before they go to bed. We don't do that. We don't watch TV. We have reading time. She's like, why can't we watch TV? Because we value reading more than we value TV. That's our family values. End of story, kid. Right? When you have your family, you can do what you want. This is what's right for us now. And just stick to those. And that's okay. But you're going to get those tough questions. And also provide a privileges and responsibility. So understand that you get more responsibility, or you get more privileges if you demonstrate you can do it, right? So if you want us to, if you want to go to the fridge and be able to get your own snack, I have to trust that you're not always going to eat the brownies. If I see that you're always eating the brownies, hey, what's going to happen? You're not going to be able to get your own snack, right? If I trust that you're not always going to be on your iPad, you're going to be able to keep the iPad in your room, or whatever it is that you're trusting them to do. But reinforce that if I trust you and if you're doing the thing you're supposed to do, you're going to get more privileges, and that's a good thing. And then continue to teach and model patience, concern, and respect, which is hard, but this is so important, especially in the age we're living in. So example here. So I'm actually going to, because we kind of talked about this, let's talk about not doing homework, because this is one that I struggle with personally. So your kindergartner doesn't want to do their homework. So what we've done was, hey, buddy, you got to do your homework. It's really important. This is how, teacher expects, this is our expectation. We can sit here together. You can do it. I can sit here with you, or you can sit by yourself, but you got to do it. And then he'll be like, still not doing, still homework, still messing around, not doing his homework. Hey, you know what? I'm going to make sure that we sit here together. What do you need? Do you need new paper? Do you need a glass of water? Let's sit here and we make sure to do it together. And then, hey, you know what? We're not going to play together. We're not going to watch your favorite show until it's done. So I need you to sit here and do your homework. And then, you know what? Okay, you're going to have to do it. Your choice is you can do it now or in the morning, but you can't go to your friend's house. You can't, watch TV. You can't use an iPad until it's done. So we're going to take a break from all those fun things until you do your homework. What's worked for us is the positive approach of saying, you know what, I really want to play your favorite game. And my kids love card games. Say, I really want to play Uno with you. Let's play. The cards are right here. I'm so excited. I'm going to play as soon as you're done with your homework. So go finish it up. Like, I'm waiting here to play with you. And that will work better than threatening them. And that's what worked for us. But let me tell you, homework is a whole different class, whole different chapter. So do you guys have any questions before we move on to consequences? Another fun one? Anything? Okay. All right. Okay. So consequences. Keep in mind that, that you get to make up the consequences, and it has to be what's right for your kid. So, teaching your kid about discipline, it means teaching them that their actions have consequences. And this is a really hard concept. It's a hard concept for some adults. Some adults still don't understand when you do something, there are consequences to that action. And you see people getting away with things. You're like, are you kidding me? Did you just cut in line in front of me at the grocery store? Worst, did you cut in line in front of this old lady at the grocery store? Like, seriously? because they've never had consequences put in front of them. And this is why it's super important we do that. Sometimes their actions lead to consequences of their own. So for example, hey, you know what? If you're going to be mean to me, if you're going to yell at me, I'm not going to play with you. Or, if you're going to throw sand, you're going to lose your shovel. Or, if your toys aren't cleaned up, you're not going to get new toys. Sometimes you got to provide the consequences to avoid destructive behavior. So if your kid is hitting their friend, it's not enough to say, hey, you don't get to hit your friend, he's not going to play with you. Be like, you know what? We're leaving. This is not how we act. And this is really important. Consequences should follow the behavior and be related to it. It is not okay because by the time, and this happens all the time at school, there is something happened and your kiddo hit somebody or bit somebody or took away somebody's toy. At the end of the day, the teacher will be like, hey, he had a great day, but just so you know, him and his friend, were hitting each other. And you're driving home and, you're talking to your 4-year-old, like, hey, why were you hitting your friend? He's like, what? They have no concept this even happened. They don't remember what their past meal. They don't remember past like the last hour. So once that whatever has happened, it's like done in their mind. So make sure that you talk about it kind of right after it happened. So if they're, like if they didn't clean up their toys, the next morning to be like, hey, I didn't like that you left your toys out. They're like, what are you talking about? That was like years ago in their mind. It has to be at the time. And the consequences should follow right away. So in their mind, the two are connected. Because if you tell them the next day, hey, I didn't like that you yelled at me or whatever, like the consequences aren't connected to them. It has to be, if you yell, I'm not going to play with you right now. And they have to be really close because their minds don't have that like long-term, they don't understand long-term like time frames yet. So make sure that it's really consistent and kind of follows right away. So natural consequence, I keep saying we'll get to this. If your child does something wrong, you let your child experience the result of the behavior. You don't lecture them, you don't tell them, and this is my son, I don't understand. I would put them in a bubble and have them, anytime the weather is below 70, they should be in jackets and shirt, like sweatpants, they should be dressed in 7 layers. My son does not like to wear pants. I mean, he wears shorts, but he see no need for like the lower part of the leg to be covered. And it's snowing outside. And he's like, I'm going to wear shorts. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're going to die. You're going to like catch pneumonia upon leaving this house. And my husband's like, you know what? Fine. You go outside. And he walks outside and we're like, okay, we're going on like a 20-minute walk. So just so you know, it's cold out there. And let me tell you, that was the last time he ever wore shorts in that weather because it's cold and it sucks being cold. So natural consequences, right? So he gets to experience that was no fun. I don't want to do that again. And this is you go to the zoo, you pay for the ticket, your kid's throwing a fit, and you go home. You don't lecture them about their bad behavior, or you don't lecture them about how you're embarrassing. You just, you know what? If you're not going to behave the way that we talked about, we're going home. And the consequences is going home, and that is bad enough to where they don't want to do it again, right? So if your child throws a toy because they're so mad and they break the toy, don't buy them a new toy. The consequence is that toy is gone, right? Like you broke it. Look, it's broken. You can't play with it anymore. We're done. No matter how much they cry, no matter how much they scream, the consequence is that, we're done here. This is what happened. And the natural consequences work well when the kids don't hear you and they don't hear your warnings. And for example, like they're mad and you tell them, hey, make sure don't leave your cup there. Don't leave your cup there. It's going to spill. The cup of milk spills on the floor. Okay, well, let's clean it up. Don't yell. Don't lecture them about how you told them many times to move the cup. Okay, well, go get the rag. It's right there. Go clean it up. And chances are you're going to have to clean up after them. But the fact is the idea that, spilling it and having to clean it up was not that great, and they're not going to want to do it again. And that's a natural consequence. And we try as much as possible to do that at school. So when your child spills milk at school, they're going to be helping, unless they're 1 or young 2s, they're going to be helping clean it up. Not because the 30-year-old something teachers can't clean it up, because they learn nothing from that experience if they aren't responsible for helping remedy the situation. Does that make sense? Obviously this goes without saying, but don't let them experience consequences that might be dangerous. If he wants to ride without a helmet, be like, sure, let's find out what happens when you fall and hit your head. Nope, not a thing, right? Like, if they're like, I don't want to use a crosswalk. Hey, guess what? That's not an option we have. We're going to cross where it's safe. I'm not willing to wait and find out what happens when a car hits you. Like, that's a safety thing. We don't mess with safety things. And my kids who don't like to wear seatbelts were like, your happiness is not my main concern. Your safety is my number one concern. I'm not really concerned if you're unhappy with the seatbelt. I'm more concerned that you're safe, right? And the consequence of not putting on a helmet is that you are never going to be allowed on anything motorized as long as you live. So it's non-negotiable, 100% every time. So creative consequences. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is like another tough one here. Let me just get to my slide on this. So sometimes there isn't natural consequences that for bad behavior, and you have to create one. So, so you can't say, if you don't behave well at grandma's house, we're not going back there, because they may not want to go back there. It might be more of like, whatever it is that if you can't show that you're responsible in behaving a certain way, you might not get to watch your shows or whatever it is. The consequences for unacceptable behavior may be taking away a privilege. And it's not fun to do, but if there's no natural consequence, this is what you're going to have to do. This works best if the privilege is related to the behavior or taken away as soon as possible, especially for young kids. So if you don't get to, I don't know, I'm trying to think. If you, are not going to do your chores and help put away dishes, then you're going to have to, then you don't get the privilege of, I don't know, watching shows. You don't get the privilege of having a friend over because you're not demonstrating that you're being responsible. Here's the tough one. If you're going to make threats, make sure you are willing to carry them out every time. Otherwise, this whole thing doesn't work. So if you say that, we're going to go home after, if you don't listen, if you're screaming, we're going to go home, you got to go home. Or don't say it, right? Or say, hey, we're going to take a break outside and come back if you're not willing to go home. Because you got to do what you say you're going to do every single time. And that is the hard part, because you're just mad and you want to make a point. But you know what? Unless you're willing to carry out the point, it does nobody any good. And trust in you. So empty threats show our frustration as parents, and it's not a positive way to encourage the behavior we want. They have to trust us, and this is how we gain their trust. And this is where I really struggle, where I'm like, you're never going to have ice cream again. And they're like, really, never? And then and I can do it for a certain time, but you gotta really stick to your guns on this one. Timeouts, they're effective because they remove the child from the situation that led to the bad behavior. So if your kid is hitting their baby brother, or if they're, whatever it is, hey, your body needs a break. You're not able to be your best self. Let's take a minute to regroup, and you can try again. And they keep the kiddo from receiving attention that may reinforce the bad behavior. Don't yell at your 3-year-old for hitting their baby brother, right? You're just giving them what they want, which is your attention. Have them sit on timeout. It can't be very long, but have them sit on timeout. And it has to be unemotional, and it has to be consistent. So timeouts, how do they work? First of all, before you even go here, you pick a location in your house that doesn't have anything fun. It cannot be in front of the TV. It cannot be where something fun is happening. Get them where you can see them, but it has to be kind of a quiet place where they're away from everything, but you can still see them. Let them know why they're there. So you're going to go on timeout because, and you have to have warned them first, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to go on timeout. Or if you do this, you're going to go on timeout. If you continue hitting your brother, you're going to take a break and go on timeout. And then let them know why they're there. You are on timeout because you hit your baby brother. And then connect the behavior. So you're not allowed to hit your sister. You're taking a break. That's it. Don't lecture them. The timing, 1 minute per year of the child's age. So if your child is 5, anything over 5 minutes, yeah, believe me, I want to put my kids on timeout for 45 minutes too sometimes. But it's after the first 5-10 minutes, they're done, right? They've either resolved the situation or it hasn't. My suggestion is to use a timer, a kitchen timer. So you're not the bad guy that's putting them there. It's the timer. Like, oh, look, the timer is not done yet. When the timer beeps, you're done, right? We had a question at our last session that what happens if the kid keeps getting off timeout, right? You put them on timeout and like we had a kid saying, well, I'm not going on timeout. And what I say is, if you're not going to go, hey, you have a choice. You can go for 5 minutes or you can go for longer. So every time that you get off timeout, we're going to start all over again. So I'm going to sit, you can sit by yourself or you can sit with me. So those are your choices, but every time you get off timeout, we're starting again, right? Or we add a minute or whatever your thing is, but there has to be consequences. They have to go. If you're putting them on timeout, that's it. They're going no matter what. And you might have to sit with them and that's okay. In timeout, no one can be talking to them. It is a time of like attention void. So don't talk to your kiddo. Don't have your brother talk to their, don't have their sibling talk to them. It is like they're taking a break from attention. And don't use that time to preach them. They're not listening. They're mad. They don't want to be there. When they're done is when it's a good time to, to be like, hey, what happened? It looks like you're really mad, right? What can we do differently next time? But when they're done with timeout, the situation is over. When they're done, you've discussed it, whatever it is, you're done and you move on to fun activities. Don't keep rehashing it. This is just kind of a couple of tips, then I'm going to take questions. So any technique is going to fail 100% if you don't follow through or enforce consequences. So 100% or 99%, okay, let's even go 95%. You got to be consistent 95% of the time. Sometimes it's just going to suck and you're just going to give in and that's okay. But you got to be consistent the other time. So whatever you say, like that's it, you lay down the law. Don't break as much as awful and embarrassing it is. Don't break your rules by giving into tantrums, right? You're at grandma's house and they make you feel bad. Why are you letting your kids cry? Don't feel bad. You're doing what's best for them, right? You're at the grocery store and your kid lays on the floor, and my kid has done this, lay on the floor because you're not buying them their toy. And you know what? I'm going to stand here and wait for you to stop screaming. And that's perfectly fine. And then we're going to leave. We're going to leave our cart and we're going to go home. This is not how we act here. But you know what? Any good parent, anybody that has kids will understand and think you're doing the right thing. Anybody that doesn't have kids is in for a surprise because they're going to have the same thing happen to them. Anybody that's judging you, they just don't have the discipline to do it themselves and they wish they did. So don't feel bad about it. Like your child is not going to die by screaming on the floor of a restaurant or yeah, it's embarrassing, but you know what? Whatever. Right? Pick them up, walk them out if you need to. If you give in to your child's tantrums, they will continue to tantrum because you were telling them that it is okay and this is how you get attention. And then just keep your goals and techniques consistent over time. So if you have, if you're working on something at home, like what you're talking about, tell your teachers you're working on it so they can be consistent at school. Because you want to make sure if you're leaving with a babysitter or leaving it with grandma and grandpa, that everyone follows the same rules consistently. Okay, that's all I have. Well, let me stop sharing my screen here. Do you guys have any questions? Is there anything else I can answer for you? I wish I could, give you a magic button or tell you something that worked magically, and it doesn't. It just takes time and it's a lot of really hard work, but it's well worth doing because you're going to see results in a few weeks to a month, like surprisingly quickly if you're consistent about it. It depends on your child, right? Like if they're really mad because they didn't get a lollipop, yeah, ignore them, they'll be fine. If they're mad about something that's pretty reasonable, right? Like they wanted to stay longer at a friend's house and or they want to go to a friend's house and you said no or whatever it is, like let them calm down or maybe sit with them. Be like, I can tell you're really frustrated. And this actually really works, is to validate your kids' feelings. Be like, hey, I know it's frustrating. You're playing so well and now we have to go. And I'd be frustrated too. That's really annoying. What can we do? Like, why don't we take you have a choice. You can take one of your toys with you. We can, leave it right here. We can come right back to it. Which of those do you want to do? Validate their feelings, because a lot of the time they have no control over their lives. And that's why they tantrum. They have no control and they don't feel understood. And partly yeah, you don't understand how you could play with soldiers for whatever it is with Legos and be that upset about leaving them. But to your kid, it's like a travesty. So be like, I wouldn't want to leave either. You built such a cool castle. Let's leave it here and come right back to it. But right now we have to go. But if you give them that sympathy, yeah, I'd be frustrated too. Let's try this. is, with it, one of these choices, would this work for you? And if you give them choices, if you validate their feelings, and if you give them that positive attention when they do it well, you're going to see a lot better results. It's really hard for kids. And actually, we do this exercise. We tell, okay, like teachers are sitting there, kind of waiting for this presentation to start. Like, okay, everybody get up right now and like, line up at the desks. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, I'm busy. I'm doing this. I'm getting water. But you expect kids to do that, right? You're like, okay, we're done now. They're like, what do you mean? I'm just finishing. So what we tell them to do, and this is what I encourage parents to do too, is give them a warning. And be like, hey, you've got a few minutes of playing left, and then we're gonna go, put our shoes and go for a walk. Just so you know, get ready, it's coming, okay? We're gonna go soon, and prepare them. The other thing I would do is set a timer, because then it's kind of taking it out of your hands. Be like, okay, I'm setting a timer for 5 minutes, which is why your teachers have those big red timers on their boards. This is what we use them for. So be like, okay, we're setting the timer for 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, we're gonna go put our shoes on, okay? When that timer goes off, me and you are going together. And so it gives them time to prepare for whatever is happening next. And you're going to have, if you do that, you're going to have you're going to have less of what you're describing. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so try that. I mean, if they're like throwing themselves and like freaking out, no, timeout's not going to work. I would like tell them to calm down. Like, hey, your choices. We're gonna, put on your shoes, or we're gonna do this, but you may want to sit with them and hold them for them to calm down. But they are not, like, if you said they're done playing, they're done playing. That's it. Right? If they're done, if you said they're done, like that's it, then you get to just help them transition to the next toy. Distracting always works. Like, hey, I saw you're playing with your soldiers, having such a great time. It's time to go for a walk. Why don't you take one? Let's clean them all up. Take one of them with you, okay? Let's take one with us, and you can take them on your walk or whatever, to kind of distract them at the age where you're talking about. As they get older, the expectation is like, you've got 5 minutes, get your life together, kid. Let's go. That's a great question. So it's mostly by age, right? At the age of about 2, at around 2, your kid they're throwing a tantrum because they are annoyed at something and they can't put it in words, right? And they're throwing a tantrum because they can't put it in words. You see this a lot in the 2-year-old class, where they can't say it and they just start screaming and they have no idea what, after about the age of 2, you can guarantee they're trying to manipulate you. They can't put it in words, and they're doing it because they're trying to get a reaction. And that's when your kid is screaming because you won't give them their toy that they want, or you making them put on their shoes, or you're making them leave their toy. And that is a want, not a need. It is very different. So at the age of 1, they are frustrated because they have a need and they can't express it. Right? They are frustrated because you're making them leave, or you're not giving the toy. And it's still like, it's not because they're trying to get a reaction. They just have no other way to express themselves. At 3, they do have a way to express themselves. They're just doing it to get their way. So at 18 months, she's not there yet. Yeah, at 2.5, 3, probably over 2.5, 3 is when they start talking. Is when you can expect them to do it to manipulate you. And they're very different, and the reaction is, and this is really when the discipline thing comes into play, is when you're like, yeah, you can cry, that's okay. I'm happy to sit here with you and listen to you cry, but this is something that, you can cry for a toy, and that's okay, but this is not how we behave, and this is not appropriate, and, so that's the big difference. This is the problem of every parent on earth, where our kids are perfect at other people's houses.
Yeah, I understand why they're perfect at school.
Yeah.
Because it's place, there are some rules,
I know.
borders, other people's, not moms. But I don't want them
I know.
dramatic.
Yeah, no, I know. So here's, Alicia, what I would say is your parent conferences are coming up, I think next week, Bothell is next week. You guys start parent conferences. So you're going to be meeting with both of your boys' parents, teachers next week. I would ask them what the rules are and what they do. And the reason, I'll tell you, putting away toys, especially the narwhals class, they're not allowed to take out any other toys unless they've put a toys away. And I would ask your teachers.
Tell them, but after that they have like crying.
And that's okay. Let them cry.
Everything around them.
You know what?
Tired.
And that's true. And then they're allowed to cry, right? No child ever has been hurt by crying. Crying is a perfectly great way to like demonstrate your emotions. And I know, because you're exhausted. You're home with a baby. The last thing you want to listen to is your two kids crying. Like, believe me, I get it. But if you do it 5, 10 times, because you know what? They cry the first 10 times at school too, when you tell them to put away their toys. They throw fits too. But if you do it consistently, they are not going to cry. And ask your teachers, because it depends kind of on the age and what they do. But I would just say, I would enforce it. Be like, let's put it away together. But that's it. Like, these are rules. Same rules are at school as at home. And follow whatever the rules are that you're struggling with. Some people tell us that they have a hard time with like their kids won't feed themselves at school. Or at home. At school, they eat perfectly fine by themselves, like fork and knife and perfect manners, and pass the whatever, please. So this was where I would say, you know what, you're so big and you get these privileges, right? Your privileges, that whatever your privilege is, right? Like, she doesn't get to choose, she has to take a nap during the day. Do you want to take a nap during the day? She doesn't get to, she only eats milk. Do you want to only eat milk? She doesn't get to play with your big pig. This is the only toy she gets to play with. You get to play with big kid toys. You get to ride in the big kid car seat, like all these fun things. But you know what? That means that you get special responsibility because you're such a big boy, and stress how great it is to be big, right? Because a lot of kids do that. They really downgrade because you're right. Like, I'm not going to put on my own.
They're all babies.
I know they are. That's true. They're all babies. That is actually a good point. But it's, but stress to them how they have responsibilities because you're a big brother. Are you kidding? She's learning from you. Look how little she is. She doesn't know how to do it herself yet. You're going to have to teach her. And kind of give them, because all kids want to be helpers. They do want to help. They want to be seen as big and responsible. So if you play to that, like, you're so responsible. Can you show her how you put on your shoes? Right? Like, all of a sudden, like, yeah, I am big and responsible.
Yeah, okay. Good.
But everyone struggles with this. Trust me. I know. I know. So here's the thing. He can be emotional. You can't be emotional, right? You don't want to put a kid in timeout because you're mad or because you're annoyed. Your kid can be emotional all they want. Yeah, like, they know they did something wrong. No, of course they don't want to go in timeout. It's okay for them to be emotional. It is not okay for you to be emotional. You cannot punish a kid. If you're punishing your child or punishing him or timeout, disciplining your child out of anger, they've won that battle. Right? Like, my really good friend, and actually our first director at what I started this business with, she told me, because our kids are a few weeks apart, and both of our kids, and she told me was that as soon as you're annoyed, as soon as you raise your voice at your child or you show them you're annoyed, you're expecting them to act like the adult. And it's so true. You got to keep your cool. So if you're, go on timeout right now, I can't stand it anymore, you're so annoying, like, you're done, right? Like, you're expecting them to act like the mature one. What you should say is, and they could be crying, and that's okay, be like, hey, this is unacceptable. We talked about why. You're going to go on timeout and take a break. You can go by yourself or you can come with me. That's your choice. That's a hard one. So we have the same problem. So what we say is, hey, you're allowed to, like, we have dinner, right? Whatever. And so there's no snacks. When you get home from school, like, here's some grapes or carrots, whatever it is, and that's your snack, and that is it. Because the problem is you're not ever actually letting her get hungry. If she keeps snacking, she's never going to eat a full meal. And because she's never eating a big meal, she's never actually getting that full. So you want to say, hey, this is your snack. You're going to be hungry, right? Your tummy's going to growl until dinner because that means you're hungry. And like my kids, they're like, what is this awful thing happening in my stomach? I'm like, guys, that means you're hungry. That's actually your stomach growling, right? Because they don't know what hungry is. They're always eating something. So if you tell her like, hey, this means you're hungry, kid, and you're going to be hungry until dinner, and they're going to eat a bigger dinner, but after dinner, that is it, right? Like for us, it's 7:30. You can eat, you have dinner, and then you can have fruits and vegetables after dinner. So if you don't like what I made for dinner, no problem. I'm not upset. You can eat all the broccoli or carrots or grapes or apples that you want. But there is no brownies, there's no bread, there's no sandwiches, there's no, anything. That's it. Fruits and vegetables after dinner until 7:30. At 7:30, it's water. And that's it, because you're right, like their sugar level keeps going up. And this is a routine they're just gonna have to get used to. So she's just gonna have to get used to. She's gonna be hungry for a couple days because she's gonna have to change her behavior. But it's actually really bad for adults to eat after 7:30 as well. So you probably like model it yourself, right? Don't eat pretzels in front of her, but just, you should be like, hey, or you know what? You can say, hey, as a family, we're gonna eat healthier. As a family, we're gonna just have this snack when we get home from school, and then this is what we're gonna do. So you guys all do it together. It's healthier for all of you, and yeah, it's a way of changing your your intake, but it's a much healthier way to eat. And she's gonna get hungry, and you're trying to get her to have bigger dinner and less snacks.